What are monthly income plans? In MarketVision's module on mutual funds, this is Deepak Shenoy taking you through MIPs, which are mutual funds with an equity kicker. So first, the concept. MIPs attempt to give you a monthly income as a dividend usually. Now, how do they do this? They are simply debt funds with an equity kicker, mostly debt. So if you look at most of the MIPs that exist, they have 80% debt and 20% equity. You might find the ratios differ in certain MIPs, but this is the typical ratio. How then do they give you monthly income? So the debt part of the portfolio earns interest because they go and buy bonds. Those bonds pay interest and they get interest every month in their portfolio. The equity portion will either receive dividend from the companies whose equity they buy, or they may be booked profits. So they might buy and sell and the resultant profit comes in. Every month they collect something extra. So if you bought the dividend plan of the MIP, this money that they receive is collected and paid out. Usually this is paid out monthly, but it may be paid out quarterly as well. And there is a growth plan of the MIP, where the money that is collected and usually paid out as dividend in the dividend plan is actually taken and reinvested. So the growth plan just reinvested. We have another video on dividend versus growth plans. We would encourage you to look at those as well. And MIPs are largely invested because of monthly income. They also provide a degree of safety. If you assume that equity is insecure, it falls 30%, and the debt portion of your portfolio gives about 8% return. Let's assume everything else is constant. You started off 1 year with 80 rupees in debt and 20 rupees in equity in the monthly income plan. You started with 100 rupees. At the end of the year, the debt portion of the portfolio goes from 80 to 86.4 because you've got an 8% return on the debt portion. The equity portion has fallen 30%, so 20 becomes 14. Yet when you add them up, that's 100.4, which is very comparable to the 100 you started off with. So in terms of safety of capital, there is some. Of course, we don't consider inflation here, so let's not talk about that, but it gives the attempt of safety. If you notice here, now we've got 86% equity and 14% debt. That's a little misbalanced because we were supposed to be like this. So usually rebalancing happens by the mutual fund manager, who says, I will take out some money from debt and put it into equity. So I might take 6 rupees from here and put it into equity. So I will buy more equity when they drop, and I will still retain 80% of my portfolio in debt. But of course, risk does exist. You can't get away from it. In the debt part, you have a security that may default or repay late. A company may say, listen, I can't pay back, or I can't pay back right now, I'll pay you back a little bit later. So the interest that they were supposed to receive doesn't come. The second risk is, of course, that the interest rates go up. So when interest rates go up, currently held bonds fall in value. So 100 rupees that are held in bonds may fall to 85 or 90 rupees if interest rates go up significantly. So mark to market value of those bonds in the portfolio goes down. So the NAV of the fund goes down as well. So there is a risk in the debt portion as well. And of course, there's equity risk, which means markets move. They move up and down on a regular basis. There is no concept of a risk-free security in any case. In real life, how do MIPs look? So usually you would find that income comes in at debt interest rates for most of the year. So if you're getting about, say, 8% in the debt markets, that's about 0.66% a month, which is approximately what you would get with MIPs for most of the year. Once in a while, they will give you a big dividend if the equity portion has resulted in a good profit. And if you notice, a lot of these funds, they might have a certain steady payment out every month, and suddenly one time they have this big kicker payment that comes in because they book profits or receive dividends from their equity companies. The concept is also that they're auto rebalance. That means mutual fund managers will rebalance the portfolio on a regular basis. So if the equity portion becomes too much because equities have gone up, they will take out money from equity, put it in debt, go back to our 80-20 or 90-10 or whatever pattern was described in the monthly income plan document. This is very difficult to do personally, plus it involves a lot of taxation, because once you get out of equity, you may have to pay some tax. Once you get out of a debt, you might have to pay some tax. Mutual funds don't. There are loads in a mutual fund. Of course, there's no entry load anymore, but exit loads typically of 1% apply for the first year. That means if you get in today and try to get out tomorrow, you'll pay 1% of the NAV as an exit load. This usually applies only for 1 year after the investment. There is a SEBI rule that you cannot pay dividends from a unit premium reserve. So what it means is that if the fund's NAV is greater than 10 rupees, you're likely to receive dividends. And if it's less than 10 rupees, which is very rare, but it's possible that if it is less than 10 rupees, then it's unlikely, more unlikely that you will get a dividend, because the fund has to actually go into premium before it can pay out dividends. There is a small impact of this. Till now we haven't seen it hurt MIPs too much. In terms of taxes, so if you get dividends, there is no dividend tax in your hands, but the mutual fund will be taxed at about 13.54% of dividend distribution tax, and the NAV will fall. So if you get a 1 rupee dividend per unit, then the NAV will fall by 1 rupee plus the 13 paise approximately that it will be that the fund will pay out as DDT. So the NAV will fall by 1.13. For a profits that are taken on exit, then typically, let's say you did a growth plan, or you took on a fund and exited after a year, you bought it at 10 rupees and sold it at 12. For those, you get short-term capital gains if you get out before 1 year, and long-term capital gains where you get the benefit of inflation indexation. So if you go from 10 rupees to 12 rupees, you get a 20% gain minus maybe 8% inflation, so you get about 12% of actual gains that are taxed according to the tax law or at that time. Who then should buy MIPs? Now, monthly income plans sounds like people who want monthly income, but anyone can buy monthly income plans. The term monthly income is misleading. It can be used as a generic growth platform for someone who wants a lower risk instrument and a high debt exposure, but some equity to provide some level of a kicker. This can be used instead of a long-term FD. There is a different a paper that we've written on how FDs behave vis-a-vis monthly income plans over an extremely long term, about 4 or 5 years, and you find that FDs underperform largely because of the equity kicker that MIPs give you. Also, it's useful as a longer term safety strategy for retirees, so they can use the money. They might be able to store it for 20 or 30 years and have a very small portion for equity because they don't want the risk to be too high. This is also usually auto rebalance. So this is a function of most hybrid funds, because this is 80-20. You don't have to think about equity has gone too low and therefore I should take out money from debt. The fund manager does this for you, and you just kind of buy it, forget it model for someone who wants this kind of an exposure: 80 debt, 20 equity, and so on. And of course, people who do want monthly income, this is a reasonable plan with a dividend plan, and you do get the occasional bonus. So it's a nice strategy to have. Which plans would I recommend? I wouldn't recommend any plans. I would say please go check online sites. There is a site called Value Research where you should search for conservative hybrid plans, which will give you a list of these. There's moneycontrol.com, which has a lot of mutual funds, and a number of other online sites. I'm not going to list all of them. There are certain details that you need to look at. First, we need to make sure that their assets are over 100 crores, because less than that, they can't really get the best debt portfolio in place. They would also need to have returns near or better than industry. So you want to check the last few months, maybe a couple of years, to make sure that they've performed near or better than industry, because this is a long-term plan. You don't care if a person starts becoming better right now. They needed to have shown some performance in the past. You want to make sure that their debt equity ratio is according to what you have specified. You can actually see the portfolios and see how much debt or equity each one has, and also check the exit load. Make sure that you're not getting charged 5%, 4%, or something like that. Of course, you can't be charged a whole lot, but you want to make sure you're aware. So tomorrow you need money desperately, and then you find out the exit load is too high. You want to check the exit load when you enter as well. So that's it about monthly income plans. We would love your comments. Do visit us at marketvision.in. Email us. The email address is lessons@marketvision.in. And do visit our forums. Tell us what you think. And as usual, thanks for listening.